Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our live stream. Today, we'll be working on a more advanced Terraform work. We'll be contributing to our internal Terraform modules. Not internal because they are open source. But yeah. So my name is Clarissa. I'm a senior developer here at thoughtbot. I help maintain our open source Terraform modules. Uh, and today I have here with me Joe Ferris and Olamide. Uh, do you want to introduce yourself, Olamide?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Olamide. I'm a senior DevOps engineer with thoughtbot doing infrastructure stuff from EKS Terraform. Yeah, so we should have fun today.
Hi, I'm Joe Ferris, previously CTO at thoughtbot. I'm currently working as an independent consultant, and I helped create some of the mess we'll be looking at today. So now I'm going to help clean it up.
Thanks all. So yeah, so I will start sharing my screen. Let me just open up a tab here. So here's what we have for today. Today we're going to update how we authenticate to our clusters. So for a little bit of background, we use config maps for authenticating to our cluster. Let me show you. For example, so it's been a while since EKS started to use a different authentication. So we are out of the default recommendation for EKS at the moment. We are still using ConfigMap. So when we had to deploy this new cluster version on Kubernetes v1.31, I had to enforce that we are going to use ConfigMap for now. So Flightdeck doesn't support the new authentication method, which would be EKS entries. Is that right, Olamide?
Yeah, correct.
So we are going to update that so Flightdeck now supports EKS entries instead of config maps. And we are doing that live, so we didn't do any prep work before that. So we're going to plan that work and figure it out together. So let me start looking into EKS entries. Do you all have a preference on how to start that?
Yeah, I think we can start by looking through AWS's documentation on EKS access entries.
Okay, I have a link for that she sent me before the live stream. Let me copy that link. Okay. I know that you did that work before for another client that we have. We didn't have that yet on Flightdeck, so you had to do some custom work on the client's infrastructure. What did you have
Yes.
to do for that?
Yeah, so for the client I worked on, we just had to create a separate standalone module setting the EKS access policy to the IAM principal that would be carrying out the actions in the cluster. So with the config maps, we assign attributes or policies to the Kubernetes groups within the config map. So that's AWS auth config map. That's the default method to assign permissions to Kubernetes roles or cluster roles. But with access entries, they've sort of made a way to remove that on the config map. So AWS created multiple options, default options that we'll be looking at in this documentation with policies that you only need to just pick any of those policies that suits your use case for the role you want to work with or the cluster role on the cluster. So once you've identified the policy you think addresses all the needs you have for the role or the cluster role, you can assign that policy to that entity. So I think if we go down in this document, we would see the list of possible policies available now.
Do you think it's worth talking a bit about how we use config maps now and what's different about the new setup? Like why I mean, we have to make the change, right? Because AWS is deprecating it, but also I think there are some advantages that are worth talking through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share some of that, Joe Ferris?
Sure.
Share what? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I asked Joe if he would like to share some of those advantages.
Well, I think this has been a source of great confusion in the past because there are two kinds of permissions you need to think about in AWS with EKS clusters. There's the permissions of the things running in the cluster and what those are allowed to access. And then there are the permissions for outside entities like developers and CI/CD pipelines that are trying to access the cluster. And so this is for the latter, changing how we're able to access the cluster. And you spoke about this a little bit, Olamide, but what we do right now is there is this magic config map entry in EKS clusters, which is basically like a config file that's YAML. And using a special syntax, you first map certain outside IAM policies to groups, and then within the group, you give those groups permission to do things in the cluster. And there's only one config map, and there's no API for merging them. So it has to be centrally managed in Terraform in one place for the entire cluster. And then any granular permissions you want, you need to first add a mapping from an IAM entry or an IAM entity to a Kubernetes group, and then give it the specific permissions you want. And that's like a system level change. So making granular permissions like I want to allow people to change this specific resource in this Kubernetes namespace is not really possible to delegate those administrator actions within namespaces. And so the new API is an AWS level API where you can create these, they call them access entries, right?
Yeah.
That lets you make a specific policy saying this IAM entity directly is allowed to access these things without doing the grouping, and you can have more than one versus the config map, which is a single resource that has to be edited. And if you make a mistake, then you lock yourself out of the cluster.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Do we have that? Do we know where that's set up on Flightdeck by heart?
I think it's in cluster in AWS. And then in modules, there is EKS cluster. Is that it? Authentication.
Yeah, I thought it was on platform. You're talking about the current config map setup, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably in the platform folder. AWS platform.
Auth config map.
Auth config map where? Inside modules or?
Inside AWS platform modules. I think you're looking at the generic platform modules.
Oh, sorry, good catch. Okay. Auth config map.
So this is definitely the grossest part of Flightdeck right now.
Yeah.
So it uses
Okay.
Terraform to look up information about the cluster, and then it runs a shell script on whatever machine is running Terraform apply to patch the config map.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. All right. So, do we have any ideas of the design for that? First, like one of the things that I was thinking about was how do we want to support updates for that, or because that will make new clusters have to like if someone is upgrading their cluster, we use a blue-green strategy for that. So if you want to upgrade your cluster version to a different version, for example, Kubernetes 1.32, you would create a new cluster separately, and you would need to have that cluster running for a bit and route traffic iteratively. And as you are confident that your cluster is running well and like your application is working well with that new version, you will route 100% of the traffic to that cluster and shut down the old cluster. So I'm just trying to think how we're going to support both versions for the people who have that version running, like they are currently using ConfigMap for that. And then we want to have that new support available as well.
I think that all of the built-in IAM roles in Flightdeck are per cluster, right? So when you make the new cluster, it will make new roles.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And right now, those are added to the config map, which would be in the AWS platform main TF.
Mm-hmm.
If you search for AWS auth config map, AWS dash auth, yeah. So it passes all these roles,
Mm-hmm.
but with the EKS entries, instead of using the module, we can make the access entries for each role.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I think we are not worried about like making a change that would impact what's existing on the platform or whatever. So I think what we could start with is I would want to create a separate cluster for that because we don't want to impact what we currently have. So we could start by going into thoughtbot's infrastructure. And like if that doesn't work, we could use Sandbox for that for now. But I think I'll just try to use a separate one just in case. So the first thing we would need to do here is adding a new cluster to the network. Is that right? So we could do thoughtbot dummy. If anyone has a different suggestion on how to go about this, it's feel free to interrupt me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll go into thoughtbot infra. Oops. Oh, I have to log in. Let me stop sharing for a bit while I log in. Okay. I am logged in. Let me start sharing again. Oops, did I export that? Okay. So it's going to add the dummy cluster to the network module. Okay. Okay. And then in addition to that, we would add that to ingress. Oops, production. Someone is asking us to amplify the sound a bit. Who needs to amplify the sound? Mine? Is my microphone working well for the two of you, or is it okay?
I can hear you okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did increase my sound a little bit. I'm not sure if that worked well, but I hope it did. Let me check providers. Do I need to add anything here to providers? No. Okay, so that should be it. Is the cluster name correct? Thoughtbot v3, thoughtbot v3. Okay. I think I won't, since I'm not routing any traffic to it, I won't add anything here to Ingress. Do I need to add anything here to Ingress? No, right?
We can proceed. If you have to have a weight, then that'll be 100-0, but I'm not sure that will be necessary.
Yeah, I think we don't need that. Thank you, Collins, for letting us know. All right. Okay, so it applied, so I will do the same on Ingress.
Oh, the cluster doesn't exist yet.
Oh, okay. So the cluster. Okay, I messed up with the steps. I thought we had to add that before, but that makes sense. So it's just the so we just need to set up the network for that.
We already applied the network, so that's fine. Then we need to add the cluster.
Okay. I think that's where we can just not do that and or that's where we would start the work, I would say. So I'll just make a copy of sandbox v3. Let me close up I will remove the Terraform log file. No, I won't do that. I will just rename the cluster here to dummy. Oops. So instead of having the auth mode here, I'm doing that with the wrong module. Hold on. Let me do that on dummy v3. Okay. So I have to rename that to dummy and change the backend to be
backend
dummy
as
instead
well.
Of anything else? Yeah, I think that's it. So instead of having the auth mode here as ConfigMap, we're just going to remove that option, and then by default, it will assign EKS access entry as the authentication mode for that. So let's go back to. Oops, I forgot to move the terminal. So it should be cluster dummy v3. Maybe I have to delete the log file and the .terraform from here. All right, let's apply that.
So at what point do we want to implement the EKS entries module? Would it be to the cluster directly?
That's a good question. So what I was thinking, and maybe I'm wrong about that. I was thinking we were going to first have the cluster with that off mode enabled, and then we would have to make the modifications to the platform, to make sure we are able to access that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That makes sense to me.
And then if we had time, we could try to add a step on our deployment workflow to make sure we're able to deploy to that cluster. Once that's done. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but that might be a bit ambitious.
We could probably also do a test to confirm that the profiles have access to the cluster, just some kubectl command.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Takes a while to make a cluster.
It does.
I forgot.
Yeah, what we could do is we could start looking into. I know it's not going to fail, so we could, in the meantime, we could start looking into what the modifications we have to make to support that. So one. Yeah, I could have jinxed it. So one thing I was wondering is if we want to like deprecate the auth config in the next version, or do we want to support both for now?
It's probably easier to. Okay, so supporting both in this context would mean we want to keep accepting the input variables supplying the admin or custom groups, but just use them differently within the module. So I think if we go into the Terraform file for workload platform in the sandbox victory .button for So yeah, we have admin roles being passed in here, and which is a list of the AWS IAM ARNs that we want to assume admin privileges cluster-wide in the cluster. So with the config maps, what's happening here is we are taking these ARNs and creating them under the system admin Kubernetes group within the config map. So any user assuming any of these ARNs in the admin role list would automatically have cluster-wide admin access. So replicating that using EKS entries would mean we will still preserve these inputs, but in the module we can use this entry to use this ARNs to create EKS entries. retaining the cluster admin access. So then the end user would not notice a difference in the functionality, but I think that's the best we can do.
You could also deprecate the custom groups option and expect people to use EKS entries directly. That only exists now because this is the only place you can specify it, because there's only one config map for EKS auth.
Someone has a question in the chat. Let me try to show it. So Colin said that they just joined without understanding the context. So are you using Terraform as infrastructure as code to define and manage your EKS clusters to allow version control, automate, and replicate infrastructure? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we are doing. Does anyone have anything else to add? Yeah, I think that's pretty much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would also make a reference to Flightdeck for more context. So Flightdeck is a module, an open source module we have that enables us to create and manage our EKS clusters and infrastructure using Terraform. So all we'll end up doing, we have a lot of modules of Flightdeck, so it would be good to take a look at it. I think we could share the link. But we are referencing Flightdeck here and using some of the modules to create the cluster and also manage the cluster. So that's some more context for you on what we're doing and how we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I could not post the link to LinkedIn because I think the tool that we are using doesn't support that, but I'm just sharing a banner with the URL for Flightdeck in case you want to take a look. Awesome.
So also, just to add to what Joe said, in place of custom groups, would we want to have a similar list style like the admin roles for principals that shouldn't have cluster-wide access, but should be scoped to a namespace? So in that case, instead of admin roles just being a list, we'll have a map with principal to namespace, defining what namespace that principal should have access to, and yeah, read-only access or yeah, something like that.
Would that what I'm thinking is that people can use the Access Entries API directly for that. Since you don't need
Outside the module
Flightdeck to manage it anymore.
Okay, so
we could make a module to make it easier if there's anything substantial to it, but I think for Terraform now it's a single resource, right?
Resource, right? Yeah.
It's like AWS EKS access entry, and then you give it the IAM profile and
the namespace and the policy you should use.
Right.
So that makes sense.
And I think
okay.
for a direct replacement, we wouldn't be using the what are they called? Access policies, because those are canned. And so for like our CI/CD pipelines, they're allowed to access specific resources and specific namespaces. And those RBAC resources are created as part of the application config module. So we'd still want access entries pointing to that group. You just don't need to pass it to the platform module anymore because it doesn't need to be centrally managed. Each application can create its own access entry.
So that means we're going to have one admin access entry for on the platform, and then each application is going to manage their own deploy entry. Is that right?
I think so. I'm curious if we even need the admin roles anymore, since for that case you could use the canned admin policy. And so here, instead of passing admin roles, you could create two EKS. How do you do it? You pass can you just pass a list of access policies when you make an access entry?
Let's see.
Yeah, we probably should go to the Terraform
Yeah.
for EKS entries.
Do you have the link for that?
Yeah. Group. So
Thank you.
so there are two links. So the first one, which is this, is used to connect an IAM principal to a group. This would be what we should use for the deploy role context. So for the deploy role, we will have the ARN, and I think the application module would have created the groups. So then we can connect both using this resource. Does that make sense?
So the applications are going to use the same group to deploy? Or is that going to be like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how that works. So
Yeah.
Is it going to be like, we're going to have an access entry for each namespace?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now we have
Yeah.
two per application. We have two groups. We have one for the CI/CD pipeline and one for developers. And so instead of creating two entries in the EKS auth ConfigMap, you would create two EKS access entries. And I think for the application case, all of the, except for the EKS auth piece, all of it's managed in that application config module. So for common cases, I think the access entry could be created there. So the application module wouldn't necessarily need to do anything. It would just need to specify the cluster it deploys to in the namespace, which it already does. And then for the admin role case, which is just for Terraform and for cluster admins, we can make one of these with the, I can link it. There's a canned access policy for cluster admin.
Yeah, I also sent the Terraform link on the resource using this.
Okay, so it would be.
Oh, it maybe didn't jump to the right place on that page. It's the Amazon
Cluster.
EKS cluster admin policy.
Yeah. Yeah, go for the next one.
The next one?
Yeah, there's EKS admin and EKS cluster admin.
This one. So if we, in this case, you would have to use the ARN. and then you pass the ARN into this Terraform resource. No, not this one. There's another resource. Yeah. So the ARN from the previous tab will go into the policy ARN inputs. Then you can specify the scope if it's namespace or cluster-wide. And the principal ARN, which would be the admin roles. And that's about it.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's start working on the admin access then for that.
Yeah.
How do we want to do that? I can create a new platform for dummy.
How's the cluster create going?
Oh yeah, forgot about the cluster. It created.
All right, good.
Okay, so let's start a platform module for dummy. Dummy v3. And then instead of sandbox, it will be dummy. Okay. And then I will, instead of referencing the remote source of Flightdeck, I will reference the local version of it so that we can make modifications to Flightdeck locally and see that change without having to push what we're doing. So Flightdeck / AWS / platform, exactly. Thanks, Copilot. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Let me go into Flightdeck. AWS platform. Do we want to create a module for that?
I don't think we need to, because it's just one resource.
Okay.
So we could just reference the resource directly.
Okay, so I'll put it down here right after the auth-config-map. Does anyone want to? Let me go back to the. So we're going to create first this one, the access entry.
Not for the admin roles. We would want to use the other one.
Instead
maybe,
of the.
Yeah. So I can also just do a brief explanation on the difference between both. So the AWS EKS Access Policy Association was used to associate an EKS access policy with an IAM principal. So the IAM principal will be just an IAM role or an IAM user, and the policy ARN would be any of the packaged IAM policies that AWS has already published. And if we go to the browser, we can see all those policies available in the documentation here. So we have the Amazon EKS cluster admin policy, Amazon EKS admin policy. So they all have different permission sets that are already prepackaged. You only have to just choose which one it is you want to use, and then use the ARN in the resource definition. On the other hand, the AWS EKS access entry resource, that's a previous tab, is used to associate an IAM principal with a Kubernetes group that is managed in the cluster. So in that case, the context there is if you have a unique set of permissions that none of the already prepackaged set of policies AWS provided can satisfy. So you want a user to be able to get all pods, but not all deployments. And you want a user to be able to edit a pod, but not delete them. So that means you're trying to create a customized set of permissions. So in that case, you want to create your own Kubernetes group, be it it's a cluster role or a role. And then once you have your group, you can associate you create your role-based permission access control. And once you have your groups, you assign those groups directly to the principal. So this helps you with that. And that's what we can use for creating our deploy roles, because we want our deploy roles to have specific access and also have access to specific namespaces.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for now,
Got
we'll
it.
just have to switch over and use the other one. That would be associating EKS already prepackaged policies.
Yeah, so I think we're basically only going to use this one, I think.
Yeah, for admin.
Okay. So let me copy the ARN for policy for the cluster admin policy.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh no.
I copied the wrong thing.
Yeah.
All right. And then instead of so instead of namespace, we want that to be cluster.
Yeah. Then we'll take out the namespaces.
Awesome. Okay. Oop.
Yeah.
And then
we want to. Yeah. Go ahead. The cluster name.
Yeah. Let me see where if we
Is that
have
correct? Yeah. We
No,
probably
it
do.
isn't.
Okay.
So we have to use that.
var cluster name. It's on line 104 actually.
104. This right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then we want to do a for loop on this.
Do you want to type that part?
Yeah.
Can you still see my live share thing on your VS Code? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Page dot value. Yeah, I think this is it.
Okay. Let's everybody type at the same time. Joe, you're muted. I'm not sure if you meant to be speaking anything.
I wasn't saying anything. I just changed example to admin.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think that's it that we need for the module itself. Now, do we need to do anything else here?
You probably need 2 set in the for each.
Oh,
Mm.
is that a dot 2 set or a 2 set? It's like this, right?
So
Like that, but with no underscore.
Okay. All right, so if we go back to our dummy platform, we just need the admin roles for that. We are sending the roles. Okay, that should work, right? Do we need to change anything else here?
I think the for each, I need to make it each.key instead of each.value.
Oh, okay. I'll let you do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they're the same when you do 2 set.
I just didn't want to have things fail, but yeah.
Let's try to apply that. Let me save the file. What?
Before we apply, is it worth trying out any of those roles to see if they can access a cluster? Then most likely they'll fail, and then we apply, then see what happens.
Yes. Let me think a little bit. Okay, so I don't have the applications set up here on that folder. Let me do that for a bit. So I'll just stop sharing for a bit and I'll copy the applications inside the live stream folder. Hold on. Okay. I don't have the hub application. I'll try thoughtbot.com. Okay, so we have thoughtbot.com here. Let me start sharing again. So if we go into thoughtbot.com, oops. And then let's configure flight control to use. I could do that just directly with kubectl since we don't have flight control configured for that, but I just want to show up. Okay, so I'll copy sandbox to configure dummy. Dummy. And now configure the context. Is that going to work? I'm not sure because the namespace doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
You'll need a different name for the context.
Okay. So since we don't have anything on that namespace, I think it will fail before we get to that point of checking the namespace, right?
I think it's fine.
What are you trying to test exactly?
We're just going to try to run a command against that new cluster and see it fail because we don't have permission to do that. Hopefully.
Got it. I see. Okay. Yes, it will fail.
For the right reasons. And not because we misconfigured flight control. Flight control. I'll use staging, kubectl, get pods. No, it's not staging. Hold on. Where does it decide which?
The environment. Oh, not the release, yeah, over there. So the context, we could duplicate that.
Okay, so instead of staging, it should be dummy.
Dummy. Yeah.
I think that does that part matter? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's irrelevant.
Okay, so instead of staging, it will be dummy. No.
It's using sandbox. Let's look at the context definition for thoughtbot.com dummy.
The context definition? Oh, it's sorry.
Yeah, there. Yeah, there. Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. We'll probably get the same error. Oh, context uses cluster thoughtbot dummy.
Okay.
Which
Well,
doesn't
the cluster
exist.
isn't defined. Yeah.
Yeah.
We only have 2 clusters in there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Dummy. Okay. Let's see if it fails for the right reason now. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's a similar error that I got when I first started to set up the new version, the new cluster version, and I had no idea about the changes on the authentication, so I was like very confused by that, but now I know. All right, so if we go into the live stream, not live stream, the thoughtbot infra platform, And with the new changes that we've made, that should work
Can
now.
we confirm the roles we are passing into the platform?
Yes, we are sending. Oops. We are sending the infrastructure admin and the Terraform
Okay.
execution. I think I should. I think I have my local account. I think it's set up to be infrastructure admin, but we could change that to developer access in case we.
Yeah, I was about to say that, because in flight control, we are using developer access, so we need to have that in here too.
Okay, so let's do that just to be sure.
I don't think we want that though. That would be giving the developers for the thoughtbot application admin access. I think we want to make a custom EKS auth entry for each of those. So previously that was in the custom roles. And we'll want to do the same thing using EKS entries. If we add developer access here, it means that anybody with developer access is a cluster admin.
I think Olamide was suggesting that for just for the sake of testing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that it?
We can take it out if once we confirm the access was granted, and then go on to the next.
I'm almost sure I did some tweaking to my environment to use infrastructure admin. So we could test that. If that doesn't work, we can add developer access.
Yeah. Was the Terraform apply we ran was using infrastructure admin, right? Not Terraform execution.
I don't know. Yeah, I think so, because Terraform execution is the role that we use on the CI/CD, right?
Yeah, so it's possible that the infrastructure admin doesn't even have access right now.
So we won't be able to do that?
No worries. We could go ahead with developer access. Once we confirm that it's got access, we can remove it from the admin roles just for a proof of concept. And
okay.
Yeah.
Oops, it's that dummy. Let me remove the log file and the Terraform folder and running it against it.
I think you need to change the backend.
Yes. Thank you. So the dummy v3. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that'd have been messy. I just see Terraform is trying to destroy 38 resources.
Well, it's nice that Terraform is smart enough to see that that's a problem and say, this backend already exists. So unless you go through a few steps and say like, yeah, I want to reconfigure it and, you know, ignore the 4 warnings, then you won't totally nuke your infrastructure.
Okay, let's apply that. Oh, that takes a while to apply, right?
Platform, yes, it does. Unfortunately.
I don't think it takes as long as cluster.
I don't know if we saw how much it took to apply the cluster one, but we could, if that takes too long, that we are here watching the logs for 10 minutes together, I think we should try to start the developer role change. Let's wait for 9 minutes. If that takes 9 minutes, we'll do something else. Oh no, I ran a Terraform plan, which is ideal, but we're just creating new things. I'm glad we noticed that before I change it to something else. Because I thought we were already applying.
I think platform takes the longest to plan, but I think cluster takes the longest to apply.
I should have run the command with. Okay.
It's auto approve, right?
Yeah, but it's okay. I already approved it, so it's going to create now. Yeah, it's doing the policy association.
Oh, so if it's creating that already, we could actually just test it before it's applied, before the apply is complete. We don't have to wait to the end.
Yeah.
It's still creating.
30
That's
seconds.
concerning.
It won't take so long though.
You have to kind of memorize what the normal creation time is for each resource. So you know if it's still creating, that means it's still failing repeatedly. You'll see the error in 5 minutes.
It should let us know that it's retrying.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the new clusters, there was an odd behavior previously where the IAM principal that created the cluster would automatically have invisible admin privileges, even if you removed them from the EKS auth. And what made me think of it was when you said earlier, Olamide, maybe infrastructure admin won't have access. And on the previous rules, you would, even without a policy association, but maybe that's gone now. Maybe it automatically creates a policy association that we're going to have to import or something.
I actually said that having in mind that whatever role created the cluster would implicitly have access.
Principal ARN that could not be found.
Can we look at the plan to find where this was in the plan? That's a lot of.
It's yeah. Where is that?
Do you have a search?
Maybe I don't trust it, but we can try it. Admin. Oh, okay, that works. Thank you.
The second one, or the one before this. Yeah.
I think I know why it doesn't work. If you go back to the platform main TF, where you pass in the admin roles. Oh, sorry, I mean in thoughtbot's the other platform main TF.
Okay.
See where it says by name without path?
Mm-hmm.
I think you want just by name. So ARNs for AWS IAM principles can have paths in them. Some resources in AWS don't expect the path prefix to be there, and the EKS auth ConfigMap was one of those. So when you are putting principal ARNs in an EKS auth ConfigMap, you had to strip the path prefix. But now that it's using an actual ARN, it wants the full path.
Got it. Okay, so let's see if that works now. So we'll have to run init again. That makes sense.
Do you know what that other error was about? Cannot use a policy that's still in, or a release name?
Reuse a name that is still in use. What?
That's an AWS CSI driver.
I don't know what that error is.
It doesn't seem related to what we are doing. I wonder if I had any changes locally, but I don't think so. Yep.
This is getting interesting. No.
I will run a Terraform apply. I know it's probably going to fail because of these other errors, but I was just
You can at least see if it'll make
triggered.
the access entry.
Yeah.
I think I see what the issue is. If you look at the providers TF, I see references to Sandbox v3.
Sorry.
Yikes.
Okay, so let's go to providers and change that to dummy. Okay. It didn't save, but I changed it or it didn't change.
Was thought I saw you change that.
I hope I'm being consistent with the naming I'm using, but I think it's correct. Okay. Okay.
Are you still using Terramate in this repo?
No, like we should, because it's very tiring to have to manage like copy paste things, but I haven't learned to use it, so I'm not using it, but it would be very helpful. Like it's still here, so we could probably use it now.
Well, we have 15 minutes left, so.
Yeah. Remember when I said we could test a deployment to see if it would work? That time.
It sounds naive now.
Yeah.
Oh, it seems it's created whatever it is he has to create. Has it? Oh, it's still creating.
Oh. The creation complete. No, I'm sorry. Hmm. It took how long it took to fail last time? It was like 2 minutes or
If it says it already exists, that might answer my earlier question about what
Hmm.
happens now for the default access.
mm-hmm.
While we're waiting, do you want to hear a joke that my son made up?
Yes.
Why are camels good at hide and seek? Because of their camouflage.
What that was good actually. Did he really come up with that?
He did.
How old is he? Is he
Interesting.
He's 7.
Oh.
I've been training him rigorously in puns.
That's nice.
It's not still creating anymore.
Yeah, but I don't see where it's at created.
No, it has an
Oh,
error
no.
message now, right? It's just not going to tell you for a while.
Yeah, okay. You're grounded. You'll be here waiting.
Hmm.
I wish we didn't fix the other error. So we would have a faster feedback at this point. This will be like a hand clicker for the next live stream. We're going to end at the mystery point. Like, and like if you want to know what the result was you have to check out the next live stream.
We need some
next
dramatic,
episode.
still creating music.
Yeah. So I think this is taking longer than the cluster. Not sure if it's because it's failing or if it's.
Well, you're watching it.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it taking longer or does it feel longer?
Yeah, it feels longer, I think. The platform, I think the platform part of it tends to feel longer for me because it's the one that I worry about, because creating the cluster, it just works unless you have something really weird, but then the platform is the one that fails if you did anything wrong with that. Or like if you needed to change anything, it's the one that fails. So I think that's why it always feels like it's the one that takes longer. So I'll put some background music.
Should we try the bean flight control just in case?
Yeah, we could try that. Let me open a new tab. Oh, my screen size is going to be messed up now. Okay, let's go. Let's see what happens. But we kind of know what will happen. Yeah, unauthorized.
It's a different error though, right?
Yeah, it says you must be logged into the server.
Before it said something about it was requesting credentials.
Yeah,
Yes.
credentials.
So maybe that's something wrong with my setup. But
No, probably not. No. Can I see the platform main.cf
yes.
in the dummy v3 folder? Oh yeah, we didn't add developer access here.
Yeah. We could tweak.
Flight control.
Yeah. Let me change. I will just change everything because I'm structure admin.
Yeah, the only thing with this is if it works, then we would have to remove it from the list to see if it stops working.
Remove it from the list to see if it what?
Yeah, so if this works, then we'll have to remove it from the list in the main.cf file to see if it stops working. And it's still not working.
I don't think it recreated the
Okay.
user.
Oh. I mean, I'll rename it. So instead of thoughtbot dummy, I'll do dummy 2.
I think you just want to change the auth, right?
The auth. Okay, instead of the name, right? Let's see what happens. It didn't recreate again.
Auth. Do we have an auth for dummy v3, dummy 2? Is
You
there
need
an
to
auth
create the
section
auth
there?
as well. So this is changing the name of the auth it
Okay.
wants to use. And then you need to change. So if you scroll down under auth, there
Yeah.
should be one that says dummy. You can change the name of it.
Yeah, 2.
So let me do that.
Enjoy the
Okay.
V2 or V3 and the 2 going together. Need like Roman numerals.
Okay, uses auth thoughtbot dummy. Didn't.
And now you
Do I
need to
have to
find
change?
the other reference to the auth and change it.
Okay.
Oh, but not that one on
Okay.
68.
Okay.
Okay. We're not going to have any idea if this is not working for the right reason. But it is creating a profile. It's doing something.
Okay. So it's still the same error.
Right. Okay. So it saves us and it hasn't created it yet.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
You have to update ingress before you update the platform. Oh, that's the other error, though. This is the interesting one. Principal could not be found.
Couldn't be found.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing about doing live streams, is that sometimes we won't be able to do what we wanted to do.
Can you do us find? Anyways.
Yeah, we are at time now. But yeah, thank you. That was fun. I think I'm sure that's something that we would need to figure out. Like, that's must be a simple thing to change. I think we did a lot of good things and showing how we test things on Flightdeck and how authentication works and what we wanted to do. And then if for some reason the audience wants to see that coming through, they can always like give a star to the Flightdeck repo and watch it to see when we create that offline, or if you want to subscribe to thoughtbot's channels on YouTube or Twitch, and you can watch us do that live if we plan to do that live at some point. But I think we're probably going to do that offline and have a pull request doing that. And if you're interested in seeing that change come through, you could start thoughtbot's Flightdeck repo and watch that. Yeah, thank you everyone who watched us today, and thank you Olamide and Joe for joining me today on that live stream. That was really fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks everyone. See you on the next live stream. Bye.